You're seeing a lot of kids now posting things online. Oh, I had a bad day. And then they get this onslaught of support from their peers. And we'll talk about how that can also be detrimental as well. What I want to actually point out here is I do have a short little video. And I'd like it, unfortunately, I was able to figure out how to get the video on there, but I have no idea how to make it bigger. So what we're going to hear is probably the most important thing. And I'd like you guys, you can just click right on it. And we're just going to go through and watch this video, listen to it.
What's up, guys? I'm Kobe Person. How easy is it for a pedophile to pick up an underage child using social media? Well, today we're going to find that out. I made a fake profile on Facebook posing as a 15-year-old boy. With the parents' permission, I friend requested 3 girls, ages 14, 13, and 12 years old. I've been talking to these girls for the last 3 or 4 days, and today we're supposed to meet up. What we found in this video is shocking and something everyone should see. Be sure to watch until the end and use what we've learned in this video to better educate your friends and family. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Yes. The man who videotaped this is from Clifton.
This first girl, her name is Michaela. She's 13 years old. We've been talking on Facebook for the last couple of days, and we're supposed to meet up at the park later when our parents leave the house. I'm just waiting right now to get the text that our parents have left the house. So I just got a text. My parents just left. I can be at the park in 10 minutes. We're going to go see if she comes in 10 minutes. We're going to go right now, set up all the cameras, and just be waiting there for her. So she said she's going to meet me at the park playground. So this is the closest to her house, she said. So right now I'm texting her, but I just got here. All right, I'll just wait, see what she says. She said, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. She's coming here. Michaela? From Facebook. You remember?
Michaela, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? He could have been a rapist. Could have been a pedophile. Why would you do this?
Yeah, you know that I could have been anyone. Like you talked to me for the last 4 days. You've been talking to me on Facebook. You know that, like, you shouldn't talk to strangers, especially online. Like, I wasn't even do I look the same as my picture? It could be even worse than that.
You realize how scary this could have been? Yeah. We have to talk.
This next girl, her name is Juliana. She's 12 years old, and we're supposed to meet up tonight when her father falls asleep. So right now I'm here with John, who's Juliana's father. We're going to see if she's actually going to come to the door or not. She said, this was the last text, LOL, I would have to wait till my dad falls asleep if you want to chill, because I can't have boys over. So she wants to chill tonight, supposedly. What do you think about that?
I don't think she's going to open the door. God, I hope she doesn't open that door.
What's your address?
I pray she does not respond to this.
Well, I can't say the address, but she literally just texted the address. So I drive her to the address, close by. My dad's going to drop me off. Alright, so she just said, I think my dad fell asleep, you can come now. I want the light right?
Yes.
Come outside, come to the front door. Are you ready? Let's chill.
Get over here. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
I'm sorry.
How can you do this? You're 12 years old. This is 20 years old. You could have been raped and murdered. We already lost your mother. What would I do if anything happened to you? What would I do if anything happened to you? I love you. Don't you ever do this again. I don't do anything like this again.
This next girl, her name is Jenna. She's 14 years old. We We've been talking online over text message and even had a phone conversation.
So right now we have the parents of Jenna. Jenna thinks her parents are going out tonight for date night. She thinks my brother is going to be driving, so she's going to get in the car, but she doesn't actually know that it's all just me. So I'm going to text her right now. Did your parents leave yet? Yeah, like 15 minutes ago. Do you think she's going to go through with this?
No way. Absolutely not. I don't even believe it's her. I
Okay.
don't have friends playing around.
What's your address? Alright, is this your house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Alright. We are here to come out. You don't think she's coming out?
She better not be coming out.
Okay, so your door open.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I see someone.
Can't believe this.
Yeah. Hop in. He's in the back. Over there.
Jenna, stop it, your mother father. Jenna, look, turn around. Turn around. Turn around. How could you dare go into a stranger's car?
What are you thinking? Just explain.
Give me your phone right now. Give me your phone now.
What would have happened if you came out and it wasn't us sitting back here and there were really crazy people back here?
We never would have saw you again.
We watched movies together. We looked at newspaper articles and the news that all these things are real life situations that have happened. And we've discussed them. What, do you think it's fine to go try it out on your own?
But what happened if this man would have drove away? There would have been 3 strangers sitting in this car. Huh? What would you have done? What would we have done? We didn't have our daughter.
You understand? You probably thought you were talking to a 15-year-old. You didn't even know what was happening, did you? You just got in like that. You were going with everything I was saying. You understand now. You should never ever do that again. It should teach you a lesson forever. Your whole life.
Make sure you guys follow me on Snapchat.
Okay, so how do you guys feel after watching something like that?
In your experience, what does it tell you about, social media and children? Why do they
This is
follow?
not surprising to me at all. With all the kids that we've worked with, every child that I work with and I bring up the conversation has either shared their cell phone number or their address or both with a person they did not know online.
Do you find what's the motivating fact behind it? Why do you do that?
It's just like when we think about when we were younger and you're playing on the playground, you're making new friends. And this is almost their way of making those friendships and those connections is online, which is a completely different where, when they're younger and they're playing and you're the parent and you're watching them, where they're at school and they're meeting people at school, but now they're that connectivity, which we talked about, is a benefit, but also it's scary as well because they're saying, oh, I want to make a new friend. That sounds like a lot of fun. You seem like a cool person. I'm looking at your pictures and you look really neat. And I like talking to you and you sound like you're cool and you talk like me. So I'm going to think you're not that bad. And I would say the majority of the time it's probably the case. But every now and then you have those situations where, and unfortunately, human trafficking is true, real, and local. And there's always going to be that potential risk factor involved with social media. And that's kind of what I wanted to put across, is that we see kids sharing this information and not realizing the consequences. And that's part of the adolescent mind, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's another site. What is it? Evo Food. It's another site, and my niece is on that site. And when she came with me, her parents had died, and she created a whole family with this site and communicates with them. So she got an imaginary brother, imaginary sister, all on this site, and it's like the people that you communicate with, they look like little characters. Are you familiar with that site?
Yeah, there's a lot of different sites similar to that where
Yeah.
you
That's
create.
interactive and it's online, so it's like a
Right.
virtual world.
Right.
basically.
That. Yeah. Exactly.
Mhm.
That is, I don't know what the word is, interesting. I don't know if I'm frightened by it, but you know,
There's the
It's
positives
but she's
about that
doing
and the
it
negatives.
herself at, how old is she?
Now she's 21, but she's been doing that since she's about 14, and she's created these people that are her families, and she communicates with them,
Mhm.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's shocking because they're young. You can hear when they cry because you don't see their faces, that they're young and impressionable. And the whole thing of judgment skills, coping skills, that all like, and the parents, you know.
And this is a
take
girl
it
that doesn't
personally.
go out, so she has no social life at her age. You know, I can't say she's a bad child, but she also, for her age, she needs to be interacting with other people her own age. But instead, that internet is her whole world.
It's like
And if
with
you
the
take that internet from her, she's like
Right,
this.
and that's the other piece I think is so important, is that you become isolated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why do I have
Mhm.
to go to the youth group if I got all my friends here and they're not even real friends,
Right.
you know? So,
It's like with the show Catfish that's out. I talked about this last
Right,
week.
yeah.
That's what a lot of the people are doing. They're creating this virtual
Mhm.
reality for themselves behind because they can't deal with their own reality of what they're going through. So it
Right.
makes them feel better by, talking to other people and just living their lives behind a computer
Mhm.
screen so they don't have to face the reality of
That's
themselves.
basically her.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's kind of what we wanted to kind of share. Like, there are definitely some very real risks. So I'm just going to kind of overview some of these. We're going to talk about cyberbullying in a little bit more detail, but that's something that's definitely very prominent, especially with the teenage population. We've got oversharing. They give way too much information than they should be. Like I told you, kids are sharing their cell phone numbers, they're sharing their addresses, the towns that they live in, the school that they go to. There are a lot of times you can put like a stamp on a picture that you take of the location that you are. So there's a lot of different possibilities of sharing too much information, and that can be unfortunate as well. You also have overexposure. Kids these days, 12 years old, are talking about sex and drugs, and they're seeing these things online, watching these videos. When I was 12 years old, I was playing with my Barbie dolls. Okay? So that this is something a totally different generation is now facing, and they don't have the maturity level to really understand what it is that they're looking at and understand how do I put that in my life in an appropriate way, and how do I say, okay, well, this is appropriate behavior, that's not. And at 11, 12 years old, that's difficult for them to do. Online predators, you just saw the video. I don't think I need to go further into that. Permanency. Everything that gets put online is always going to be there. I know the big thing about Snapchat and the logo is a ghost, because you send those pictures, it shows up for a period of time and then it disappears to the users. But it's not gone from the internet. It's accessible by the administrators of that website or that application. It's also accessible by law enforcement. And when we get into law enforcement, we talk about legal consequences. Law enforcement, there are a lot of laws on the books that all they need is a warrant, and they can access an entire profile. And this, a lot of times when you set up an online account, on the user agreement, it states if there's a proper warrant, they will hand everything over without your knowledge. And you're agreeing to that when you click on the I agree to these terms. Nobody reads that, but it's there, right?
I was just explaining that I went through that, and when the police confiscated the phone, he used a different user ID, but under the same thing, they were able to pull that up. It's like CSI.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
unbelievable, and they went through everybody's phone in the home.
you know.
And they have that accessibility and that permanency, and they can see all the activity that was ever done on that
Right.
user profile. So as much of a private message that you may have sent to somebody, as much as a post that maybe you deleted years and years and years ago. So those are some things to think about as well. Physical health, there are physical health implications. Sitting there hunched over, using the thumbs on the phone, those are things that do cause physical ailments, and there is proof of that as well. We can move on. Okay. So I don't think we're going to go into the next video unless we have time. I'll go back to it. Unfortunately, we're having little technical issues. Of course, I'm here talking about social media, and we're having technical problems. But yes, you do have the PowerPoints. At what cost are these kids putting things online? As you can see, these two kids are on the top of some high-rise.
Empire State.
Is that the Empire State Building?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, and they're taking selfie photos of themselves climbing. And why are they doing this? Are they doing it for the thrill? Probably, but why then take a picture of it so that you can post it online, so you can be that next social media viral star? And we're seeing a lot of people posting videos and pictures of themselves doing strange things online. We have the pranking. Pranking is a common thing where we see a lot of kids pranking their grandparents, which I get very upset when I see those videos. I hate
Can you
those
give some
videos.
examples?
A lot of times they'll come up while maybe grandma's cooking something and she's got her back towards you, and they'll blow the air horn, or they'll startle her, or they'll you see a lot of boyfriend-girlfriend pranks where they will put, or roommate pranks where they'll put oil on the floor so somebody coming through right in front of the stairs wipes out and falls right down the stairs. And there are physical consequences of those things. And they're all doing this to try to get to be seen, or to get those likes, or to get those followers to look at them. The dangerous selfies you can see right there. Fortunately and unfortunately, I believe it's the boy in the blue sweatshirt. He's climbed many buildings, and he was, I think this fall, they finally charged him with trespassing. So there are legal consequences to what he's doing. He's leaving a trail of what he's doing. It's not legal to be on top of that building. So we have a lot of kids doing celebrity impersonations, trying to look like celebrities so that they can be online. Sometimes you'll see people going to extremes in that, as far as plastic surgery. Sometimes you'll see people doing other types of activities, and we'll talk about those in a little bit as well, that kind of show those as well. We see a lot of dancing videos, kids dancing. Sometimes it's quite embarrassing to watch some of these videos, and a lot of times these dancing videos set kids up for cyberbullying. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, posting suggestive suggestive photos online. This is a big one with young girls. They may try to take a selfie where they kind of hold it up high. They try to get like the nice neck jawline, right? And usually when they're doing that, they've got a low-cut shirt on and things like that. Images like that, they say, oh, well, this is a really good picture. I'm going to put that as my profile picture. And this often instigates people who are older to either make inappropriate comments or try to make friendships with these young girls. She may be 14 years old, but she looks like she's 21 in these photos. So those are some things that, as parents, we have to kind of look to as well. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of test your knowledge a little bit. I'm going to do it a little differently than I did it last time. So I am going to warn you guys, there are going to be some photos on here that may be difficult to look at. But these are things that kids are doing to be seen online, and these are some of the physical consequences of it. We have kids doing these online challenges. You can skip over. All right, so here I want you guys to take a look at the blown up, bruised lips. This is a popular challenge, which you guys do have a handout talking about some of the challenges that kids are doing. This is called the Kylie Jenner Challenge. The purpose of the challenge is to, are you guys familiar with the Kardashian family and the, okay. So this girl has these beautiful, lush lips, probably plastic surgery had something to do with that at some point. And what these girls are doing is they're getting these little cups and they're sucking the air out of the cups to kind of create that plumped lip look. Here you can see it actually caused her to split her lip, and as you see also next to it, the bruising around the lips. If this is done multiple times, that bruising that you see can become permanent if it's repeated over and over again. And those are some things to keep in mind. We can go to the next one. This one is hard to look at. We went last week, we saw some parents and everybody thought this was pretty much texting and driving, but that was not the case. This was a relatively seemingly benign activity called the duct tape challenge. The purpose of this challenge is to wrap yourself in duct tape and try to get out of it. So you have your friends wrap you up in duct tape and you try to get out of it, or escape, Houdini style. It's the best way I can explain it. This young boy had done the challenge multiple times. He was doing it with his friends, and he actually, in the process of trying to escape, he fell into a windowsill. He crushed his orbit, and he did have an internal brain bleed from the fall. This could have been fatal. You can go to the next one. This one right here, as you can see, it looks like burns. This challenge is called the Salt and Ice Challenge. So, as you know, we don't combine salt and ice because it gets very, very cold. So what the purpose of the Salt and Ice Challenge is to sprinkle salt on an ice cube and put it on your skin and be videotaped how long you can withstand the pain before you have to remove it. And it looks here that he withstood the pain for quite some time, but he also wound up with 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his back from that. This one right here, it's hard to see what she's doing, but this is called the condom challenge. Kids are going into their parents' nightstands and drawers and dressers, and they're getting their parents' condoms, and they're sticking it up their nose, and they're pulling it out their mouth, and they're doing one of these. I know, it sounds really ridiculous that they're doing this. The concern, there have been deaths related to this challenge. A lot of kids are doing this with lubricant-based condoms, so when they try to suck it in, it's actually going down into their airway and lodging in their airway. And since a condom is something that's meant to withstand pressure and friction, they're unable to pass air, and they actually suffocate from that. This is a bit of a tongue twister. This one is called neck nomination. This is a term that was been made up. The point of this challenge is to drink either a large quantity of alcohol or something that is not an edible substance. Antifreeze. I think there's been a couple concoctions that people make up, and the whole point is to be videotaped while you're drinking these beverages and to post it online, and then you neck nominate somebody else to do the challenge as well. And that's the purpose. And if you don't do the challenge, you're kind of chicken kind of concept. There have been alcohol poisonings related to this, as well as other stomach pumping, emergency room visits as well. And that's for the challenges. Now, I want you to keep in mind, when we talk about the challenges that I mentioned, there are dangerous challenges that I spent a lot of time speaking about. But then there's challenges that are relatively benign and safe. As you can see, the two gentlemen right there are doing what we call the Running Man Challenge. There's really not a whole lot of harm in something like that. There's a mannequin challenge, which I think there's a song that goes along with it, and everybody kind of freezes in the room. So there's a couple other challenges that are not necessarily dangerous, so to speak. What I wanted to talk about was cyberbullying and you also have a handout as well with that. that talks about cyberbullying. But one of the big things is knowing if your child is a victim or a bully, based on some of the behaviors that they may display online. Because cyberbullying, if you guys remember from, and I'm going to say when I was in high school, because we didn't have this when I was in high school, if you were getting bullied in school and you went home, and oftentimes you closed the door and you were home, you were in a safe place. There was no more, bullies aren't knocking on your window, they're not climbing in your back door. They kind of leave once you go in the home. And the downside to when we talk about bullying online is it follows you everywhere. It's in your hand when you're walking home from school. You walk into your home, it's there if you're online. If they think they're going out to a social event with their friends who are not bullying them and they are a victim of bullying, it could follow them there. So these places that used to be safe havens for us as kids are no longer those spots anymore. And that's kind of the point I want to bring home with cyberbullying, is it's much more intense than what we were used to. So when we're talking about a victim, some of the things that, yeah.
The thing with these things is though, is the lingo that the kids use. Because I looked on the phone, literally looked on the phone, but I didn't understand what was on there. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Only 100 words.
Don't worry, we'll talk about that. So we get a sudden loss of interest in the electronic devices that they're using. They begin to they're almost avoidant, and they don't want to talk about why they're avoiding that. And that's a red flag for us. That social withdrawal. Suddenly, she's on that website, and all of a sudden she doesn't want anything to do with it. And why is that? She doesn't want to talk about it. And so those are some red flags there. The refusal, reluctance for school, other social settings, and those are things that with any child that is a victim of bullying, even at school, we may experience those as well. Sudden changes in mood, especially. And again, that's another typical sign that you'll see of bullying even at school. Changes in grades, academics, definitely. When we're looking at possibly, do I have a bully on my hands, is a history of being bullied. Were they bullied by somebody else? Are they avoiding talking about their excessive social media use? And do they have multiple accounts for multiple sites? That's usually a sign that there is some kind of bullying going on or something inappropriate if there's multiple accounts. I know kids do this all the time, but when they switch out of the screen or they quickly shut everything down, I mean, they do it. Most of the time, it's pretty mundane. It's usually not that bad. It's just that they were supposed to be doing homework or they were supposed to be doing something else. But if this is something that is repetitive, even when they're not supposed to be doing their homework, or they're online, they're on their Facebook, and they're still closing it out, that could be a cause for concern as well. And when they become excessively irrational, when the social media is taken away from them, I'm not talking about just simply upset. I'm talking about an irrational behavior, becoming violent, and that sort of thing. Whether it's verbal violence, physical violence, that this is definitely one that I have witnessed, would be when they make the sarcastic remarks when they're with somebody else of their age and they're on their electronic devices and they're saying things or they're joking about. It's almost like they're having like an inside joke, but it's snarky and you kind of see that sarcasm, and those are kind of warning signs right there as well. And also spending long hours online when those are times that they would normally be alone, especially at nighttime. That's the biggest time, bedtime, being on the internet then. So how do we address it? How do we address that? Addressing a victim, the best thing to do is to encourage the kid not to respond to the bully. And don't respond to the bully yourself, because as a caregiver, that's our innate reaction. Is I need to protect them. I want to respond, and that's not what we want to do. We want to save that evidence. We want to preserve it, and we don't want to instigate any more of it, because where we think we might be helping a situation, we could possibly be making it worse. We do want to block the bully, and find out how to block that person on that website so that they can't contact you. You can make reports through the actual website administrator. That is a little complicated sometimes because there's multiple steps. They ask multiple questions, because I think they just don't want to be kicking everybody off their websites, but they want to make sure this is a legitimate complaint. So there is that. Also, reporting to law enforcement if that's appropriate, especially if you fear for the kids' safety, and also reporting it to the schools. There are laws in the state of New Jersey. New Jersey has very strict anti-bullying laws. And cyberbullying that happens to kids in relation to school does not have to be on school grounds for the school to be legally liable to do something about it. So that's something really important to know.
Yeah, and there's a process, and they have to respond in a certain amount of days.
Yes.
Just like EPs or legal documents, so is the bullying once you report it.
Right, yes, and always report in writing. That's the best way to do it, to have a trail. If you suspect that you're dealing with a bully, definitely be aware of the warning signs and knowing that not just one warning sign, but multiple warning signs together. That's usually the indicator that there may be a bully on our hands. And definitely, and this is a good rule for any kids, but you want to be setting very stringent rules with their technology. And I'm not saying, when I say stringent, I'm not saying, oh, they can only have an hour a day. We're saying, if this is the rule, we're going to stick to it. We can't be making exceptions every other day, because then it's going to always be about the exceptions. Know the school's rules, policies, and the laws in New Jersey. And that's definitely very, very important. I think probably one of the biggest things when we have kids using social media, how old are the kids we're with?
10, 9, and 7.
How old?
10, 9, and 7.
Okay, so they're right at that beginning phase. Absolutely.
Mine is 15, but he was 14 when he got into trouble because he responded. He lied. He was talking about he was a prick and a blood and what he could do. And he
Probably what
and it went to law enforcement.
Right.
And I had to wind up going to court.
Absolutely.
And he had to be on the, I was just telling him this thing went for a year and it ends next week.
Yeah, that's
But
definitely.
he had to go through the counseling, through the court system, all of that. I said the detective worked with me because he of his age, so he did not fingerprint him or set him through juvie. But had he been 15, he would have went through the system and been processed. So he doesn't have any record. You understand? But that's how he responded. He's affiliated with a gang and all of that. And he's not affiliated with no gang.
It was just something creative.
That's something, to get back at them, they was bothering him. But he went and retaliated this way. And then the next thing I know, here goes the school calling. Here goes the detectives at my house. Here goes my phones being confiscated. All my tablets being confiscated. For this.
Circular,
Yeah.
And then the scary.
And then he tried to lie
yeah.
to get out of it, which made it worse. And that's when they pulled, and when they deleted, and they could pull everything up. So I've been through that. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Mine, she's gonna be 15, my granddaughter.
Okay.
Something like that we went through. She started on Facebook, talking, you know how they request your friend, so she accepted them. Come to find out, it was a grown guy, knew her mother. It happens to be that he knew her, but she didn't recognize him. So he called her mom. Her mom happened to call me and talk to me. Now I was like, what? She was like talking back and forth like a little chat thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got on that, yeah. Gotta put that stuff.
So you unfriended him. Did anybody say anything to him about it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
My son did. My oldest son is 33 years old. And he got on.
Good.
Because I have 3 kids. So.
Okay.
The second one is 30 and the other one, she's going to be 21 on March 31st. No, my babies are big.
Yeah, so we're right in that prime age where social media is, if it's not already big, it's going to be very soon. It's going to catch up really quick. And you know, some of the best thing to do is to honestly have that frank conversation with them, especially the young ones. We do a social media presentation for preschool age children, specifically for that reason, to talk about, you know, introducing the concept of online safety and stranger danger. And so it's scary how early we're starting with them. But definitely have that frank conversation, have firm set rules. And that's difficult. It's difficult to do with a teenager, and they want to have the rules for themselves. Right, absolutely.
And the thing about it is they can communicate through the games. Those
Exactly.
PS4 systems,
Yes.
the Wii U systems, all of that. So when I took away the phone and whatnot, I had to take away the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
learned a lot.
And that's scary because at 10 years old or so, they're on those games, and they could be talking with somebody who's 45 years old, 3 states away.
Well, I have 2 phones, and one of my phones that they play on, whenever anything, because they're linked, I hear a signal when anything happens on that phone. But isn't there some system that can be developed so that you know, or you can see what
There are several programs out there, and I'll get to those in just a minute. Yeah, absolutely. The best thing to do, especially when they are on the social media and they are using it actively, is just being open and honest with them. And it sounds like you guys already have. It sounds like they've had a couple trip-ups already, and hopefully those were learning experiences. But you can't always say, "Oh yeah, this is definitely a learning experience," because they're teenagers. They have that instant gratification in mind that they want. And ask to teach you. Have them get on there and say, hey, let's create, you want to create an account? Okay, let's create it together. And the scary thing is that a lot of kids that have the smartphones, they're just going to sit there and they're going to create an account right there, right in front of you. And you for all you know, you think they're texting their best friend and they're creating a new account on some new website. And that's...
When she gets on it, she has her iPhone and I have mine. So I already know when she's on Facebook.
So you can tell us.
It pops up on my phone.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
read everything. I'm like, look at this. But so far, she changed. She's been good now.
That's good. And that was going to be my other thing, is not only have them let you see their profiles, but have their profile. Have a full, complete access to their profile so that you can get on there and you can see the things. Because it's very easy. If I have Facebook and Amy has Facebook and I want to post something, but I don't want Amy to see, I can put, before I post it, there's a little spot where I can say, everybody can see it but Amy. I would never do that to you. But that's something that they can do, and they can say, well, I don't want my parents or my grandparents or my aunts or uncles. They can say, nope, they're not going to see that post. But if you have access to their profile, there is also a spot where you can go to their activity log, and you can see every like, every message, every single thing that they've done online.
You could also see like how they logged on, where they logged on from, if it was a phone, if it was a PC, and it tells you like the location of where they logged on. So if they logged on here and then they logged on home, it'll also give you their location in which they're logging on.
And that's the other thing, is when we take away the cell phones and we take away the tablets and the computers, and that doesn't mean when they go to school they're not getting on it.
They follow their friends on phone.
Right, they go on their friends' phone. Right?
My friend gonna call me from another number. What happened to your phone? Oh, it died.
Right. So, those are definitely some things to think about. Now, when we talk about talking to the kids, we also got to listen to them because sometimes they've got some things to say. Usually they always have something to say, right? So we want to find out why they're using each site that they have. Well, why do you have this account if you also have this account? Question them and listen. And the harder thing is to not be judgmental about it when you're listening, because you want them to feel comfortable coming to you, especially if it comes down to a point where, you know, he's getting bullied. Rather than lashing out, to have somebody to come to us who's an adult and be like, what do I do about this? You know, and a lot of kids instinctually say, well, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them I'm tough. I'm going to show them that I can handle myself. And that's a lot of what we see with these
It's another thing too. I said, why you didn't come to anybody? I'm not a snitch.
You know, that's a big word.
Yeah,
That's the big word right now.
Big word.
That's
Nobody wants to be a snitch. You know?
But you all on this.
right. So, and that's a big.
I remember those days when my oldest son, when he was young, I'm not a snitch. I don't tell on none of my friends. I'm looking at him, and I was like, what?
And those are your friends?
And these are your friends, huh? You'll fall down. You'll go with them, huh? You're
Right.
going down with them.
Yep, and that's a big
how we are.
mentality. Yep, absolutely. And definitely looking for those signs of cyberbullying one way or the other, whether we're looking for the victim or the bully, and being aware of that, and being supportive, because we want them to be able to come to us, and that's the hardest thing. Because as a parent, how do you be supportive of these websites that are exposing them to so much that I don't want them to be exposed to? And those are definitely some things to talk about. I am going to take a couple moments just to mention a few things that I did not mention on the PowerPoint. But there are, if you do also have a smartphone, there are apps, there are programs that you can use to actually monitor their every move online with their phone, every phone call, every text message, every website that they're on, every app that they're using, everything that they're doing, where they are. One of them is called Custodio, and the nice thing about that specific one is that you can get a free version. I'm all about getting stuff for free, but you also have the option of paying up. When we talk about the carriers, a lot of the phone carriers, while they will not block particular applications, what you can do is you can limit how much data they're allowed to use. So their phone, all of a sudden, they might hit X amount of data through the month, and they can't use anymore. They're done. And I think that, I know with Verizon it's $5.99 a month. I have it for my husband because I need to. He uses too much data. But those are some things to keep in mind when you're looking at what can I do to monitor their use. But I would say most importantly, if you have one of those parental type apps, is to be honest with your kids about letting them know that you have it. Because not letting them know is, as much as we need them for them to gain trust in us, they also have to have trust in us as parents. And I think that's one of the big things with kids. There is another handout that I provided you guys with. It's 100 terms, only 100, that's all I could find, I'm sorry, of terms that kids might be using that you may not. These are warning. Most of them are kind of warning terms. Some of the less scary ones aren't really on there, but anything that could be used in an inappropriate context, I put those terms on there. Just a nice list of the unfortunate thing is that these are always changing.
Yeah, now they use, what do you call it, milligrams of
the emojis.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they use them now, so I don't even know what that.
Yeah, and the emojis can be interpreted in various different ways, so it's not, they don't mean one set thing. But these are the terms. This was as recent as January, I want to say, these terms were put together. So these are actually being used with the young kids. And those are things we might see. Some of them are things such as my parents are watching, like PAW. So it may make it look like they're just saying something, and it seems pretty benign, or it looks like a whole nother language, and those are some of the scary things to look out for. But
I would suggest, sorry to cut you off,
That's okay.
watching the show Catfish. It's more than just like a TV show. It is like a kind of like a reality show, but you do learn how easy it is for somebody to take your picture and make it like become you, or how easy it is for somebody to take your picture, put into Google search, and every picture you've ever posted is now like a photo album for you on the internet. It also shows how people go behind screens and become a different person that they aren't. So I could be here and I have my phone, but I could be an imaginary person talking to Ellen, and she has no idea that it's me sitting right here next to her. So it shows you a lot about what kids are doing on social media, how they're hiding, how they're using it as revenge for other people. So there are like a lot of episodes of it.
I watched it.
They always have like an up and coming season, and it just gets more and more in depth of how things are changing with social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of kids are using some of the dating websites to meet people, especially as they become a little bit older and more interested in the dating scene. You have a lot of kids that are 16, 17 years old pretending they're 18 so they can get on these dating websites. And those are some things to be concerned about as well, especially as the kids get a little bit older. But other things that I have seen personally working with the kids that we work with is I've seen kids sending sexual photos, whether they're nude pictures or they're pictures of sexual acts, and oftentimes things like that get sent out, maybe to a boyfriend or a girlfriend. The kids will break up, and then they begin to spread it. And a lot of kids not only realize that it's illegal, there are legal ramifications for distributing, because technically that becomes child pornography. You also have children that or victims, the ones that thought they were sending this in privacy, becoming victims now. And there's been a lot of negative consequences where girls, for example, have harmed themselves because these pictures have gotten out there. There have been reported attempted suicides, and there have been reported successful suicides from that sort of thing. So it's really important what's being shared as well, even if you think it's just to one individual on a private text message. They just save it and they're good to go. So those are some of the scary things. Does anybody have any questions? I feel like I just took a whole lot of information and just kind of went poof.
You know, we explained a lot of things I kind of knew a little bit, but now I know much more. And you know, it's just so hard to stay on top of all this because it's constant.
Yeah, but the best way is, like Ellen said, open communication. That's the best way you're gonna know about these new trends, is being open with your grandchild and having that discussion.
Since most of grandmothers, how do you find any difference with grandfathers? The reason I'm saying it because our parenting is a little different.
You know what? That's very common. Super common.
I'm aware of a lot, and boys are older, and so I'm watching them very carefully.
Yeah, and that's important. Is that they know that at least one parent is on top of it, and that sometimes that's all they need.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
I
not.
say very frankly, so what you get with your mother, what you do with your grandmother, what you do with your other grandmother, you're not getting away with me. And I'll just say it, and they'll just stop because I'm always
Sometimes they
engaged.
need that. They need that strong, authoritative. Yeah.
It's also good to provide them another source of like a role model figure, because a lot of kids nowadays are being influenced through media. Through media nowadays is all sex and drugs. So that's what they're knowing. They're starting at 10 and 11 having sex. Like, they don't even know what these body parts are and stuff like that, you know? So having that, like, knowing to be afraid that, like, oh, I can't do this around him, will also give them that idea. Like, we talk about it all the time that, like, our dads, like, we would have never gotten away with any of this stuff. Like, my dad's a cop, so, like, I was always terrified of that, you know? But it's just having that influence and that role model to know that, like, what would happen if I did do this, to think of the consequences before they actually did do something.
Mm-hmm. It's hard because how do we keep up with this ever-changing world that we did not grow up with? It's relatively new to anybody, you know, but these kids are growing up with it, so to them it's completely normal. And you know, I'm putting myself in the other population because I don't, you know, I might look pretty young, but I don't feel young when we talk about social media, that's for sure. But it definitely is something scary because the kids are always finding ways around what we know, and how do we keep up with it so that we can maintain that growing trend? What's popular apps now? And that's the thing that's scary because kids have kind of stopped. They're on Facebook. You still see a lot of kids on Facebook. They have the accounts, but they're not using it like they're using the Instagram, they're using the Twitter. The Facebook is what they use to look for people. They find them, and then you can link your Facebook account to the Instagram account, to the Twitter account. Right. So a lot of kids, they're on Facebook simply to look people up, and then they move on to the next site. And that's almost what's more scary, is that the Facebook has so many users worldwide, and that's kind of scary in a way. So
I also think not separating, but like kids are learning from hanging out with like older cousins, older family members, older peers, or whatever. So they're not really understanding what's age appropriate for them is appropriate for someone who's a few years older. So setting like those standards for the different ages, like yeah, they may have social media, but what are they allowed to do? What specific social media may be appropriate for their age versus someone who's a few years older than them?
Mm-hmm.
Just say no.
Right.
For my granddaughter, who is 7, she is so far advanced. And she's got this defiance about her, determination. I'm really fearful about her. I mean, just don't know, because her brothers are smart, and she's learning from them, but she's her own person. It's amazing. It really is.
Spider personality.
Yeah, it's
and
scary with her.
That's when it comes down to having that full access to her profiles.
My grandson was on my phone, and the little one, like you said, she's 6, and she pulled up something off my phone that he had put on there that was inappropriate, and showed me and asked me, "What is this?" You understand? So, and she's 6 years old, so I know what you're talking about.
And it's also understanding, like, it comes back to cyberbullying, like the double standards that are in this world. Like, what may be okay for a boy to do, and a girl go and do the same thing, yet she's being labeled and she's being bullied, and her self-esteem is being lowered because she's just following what maybe her older brother is doing, but also understanding that there are double standards in this world, and there will never be equality when it comes to guys doing something versus a female doing something.
Absolutely, yeah. So.